I made a huge mistake coming to the Philippines. At least that's what I kept telling myself, sitting alone in a sterile hotel room on the 24th floor. I'd watched the rain blur the million lights of Manila into a watercolor painting of regret. I came here chasing a dream, a collage of perfect beaches and radiant smiles that I'd pieced together from countless travel videos. But my reality, it felt different. It was a roar of horns, a blur of faces in crowded malls, and a crushing sense of being totally anonymous in a city of millions. I felt like a ghost, just watching a life I couldn't touch, a culture that felt impossible to break into. Every single day, I felt like I was falling further from the very reason I booked the ticket. This grand escape was quickly turning into my biggest, most expensive mistake, until it wasn't. Until one split-second decision to get on a tiny propeller plane to an island I couldn't even pronounce changed absolutely everything. Let's go back to the beginning, to where that feeling came from. My journey started in Germany with a heart full of expectations and a backpack stuffed with swimsuits. The Philippines. The name itself felt like a promise of paradise. More than 7,000 islands of pure beauty. I landed in Manila, and the first thing that hit me was the air. It was thick, heavy with humidity, car fumes, and the smell of street food I was way too intimidated to try. I'd read that Filipino hospitality was legendary, that the people were the country's greatest treasure. But from my air-conditioned taxi, stuck in hours of traffic, all I saw was a chaotic dance that I just didn't know the steps to. I'd planned to use Manila as a launch pad, but I honestly felt paralyzed. The sheer scale of it was just overwhelming. I'd walk through these sprawling, glossy shopping malls, places so big they have their own zip codes, and feel completely alone. I was surrounded by thousands of people, by families laughing over meals and friends shopping together, but it was like a transparent wall stood between me and them. I'd smile at people, and they'd smile back, but it was quick, fleeting. There was no connection. It felt like walking through a movie set where I was the only one without a script. My days fell into this sad, predictable loop. I'd wake up late, scroll through photos on my phone of other travelers, having the time of their lives on white sand beaches, and a wave of anxiety would just wash over me. Why wasn't that me? What was I doing wrong? I'd force myself out of the hotel, find a coffee shop that looked exactly like one back home in Berlin, and drink overpriced coffee while trying to plan my next move. But every plan felt hollow. Go to another city. It would just be more of this. Go to a famous beach. I had this fear that I'd just be another lonely tourist sitting on a towel. The culture shock wasn't about weird food or a different language. It was deeper. It was the shock of my own disconnection. In Germany, I'm independent, I'm confident. Here I felt like a child. I was scared of getting on the wrong jeepney, of getting ripped off, of missing the subtle social cues. My own insecurities were building a wall around me, brick by brick. One evening, that feeling of regret was so strong, it felt like a physical weight. I was supposed to be exploring, discovering, living. Instead, I was in my hotel room ordering room service and watching a dubbed American movie. I looked out at the rain-slicked streets, at the endless river of red taillights, and I just felt tired. So tired of trying and failing to connect. I seriously thought about cutting my losses, changing my flight, and just going home. Admitting that the Philippines was a mistake. I opened my laptop one last time, not to find a flight home, but to search for an escape within my escape. A last-ditch effort. I typed in remote, quiet, authentic Philippines, and a name kept popping up, Camiguin. An island born of fire, they called it, small, volcanic, and a little off the beaten path. There were stories about its sweet Lanzones fruit, its laid-back lifestyle, and a festival that was happening right now. The Lanzones Festival. It felt like a sign. I booked a flight for the next morning on a whim. fueled by desperation and a tiny spark of hope. I told myself, this is it. This is the Philippines' last chance. The flight to Camiguin was on a plane so small I could see the pilots in the cockpit. As we started to descend, the world just transformed. The concrete jungle of the city gave way to a brilliant, shocking turquoise sea. And then, there it was. A pear-shaped island, impossibly green, its volcanic peaks wrapped in a soft mist. It looked like a lost world. As soon as I stepped off that plane, I knew. Things were different here. The air wasn't heavy or polluted. It was clean, sweet, and smelled of salt and flowers. The airport was just one small building. No frantic crowds, no blaring horns, just the gentle hum of the island. My ride was a motorelle, a brightly colored tricycle that's the workhorse of the island. As we chugged along the coastal road, I finally saw the Philippines I had been dreaming of. Kids waved as we passed, smiling with their entire faces. Lush forests cascaded down the sides of the volcano, and every so often, I'd get a glimpse of the sparkling sea. It was beautiful, sure, but more than that, it was peaceful. The frantic energy of the city was gone, replaced by a slow, rhythmic pulse. My guest house was simple and family-owned. The owner, a woman named Elena, greeted me not like a customer, but like a visiting niece. She showed me to my room, basic but clean, with a balcony looking out on a garden bursting with tropical plants. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the need to lock my door and hide. I felt safe. One of the first things I noticed about Camiguin was the simplicity. The internet was spotty, my German SIM card was useless, and occasional power outages would plunge the neighborhood into a sudden quiet darkness, lit only by the stars. In Manila, that would have sent me into a spiral. Here, it felt like a blessing. It was a forced digital detox. I couldn't just numb my loneliness by scrolling through my phone. I had to look up. I had to be present. I had to listen to the geckos on the wall and the distant sound of the waves. Elena told me my timing was perfect. The whole island was buzzing with excitement for the Lanzones Festival, a week-long celebration of their most famous fruit. She explained that the lanzones from Camiguin are the sweetest in the Philippines, a gift from the volcanic soil. The festival, she said, was the island's way of giving thanks. "You must go," she insisted, her eyes sparkling. "It is the heart of Camiguin." And you know what? She was so right. This trip was already starting to feel completely different. If you want to see where adventures like this can lead, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have a feeling this is just the beginning of the story, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Following Elena's advice, I headed to Mambajao the next day. The moment I arrived, I was swept up in a wave of sound and color. The streets, which I'm sure are normally quiet and sleepy, had been completely transformed. They were a pulsating river of people, a kaleidoscope of motion. The air thrummed with the sound of drums, a deep, rhythmic beat you could feel in your chest, a sound that seemed to sync with your own heartbeat. Everywhere I looked, something was happening. Houses and street posts were decorated with bunches of the pale yellow lanzones fruit. Performers in the most incredible costumes were getting ready for the street dancing competition. And these weren't just costumes, they were works of art. Dancers were covered in elaborate outfits, inspired by the lanzones fruit, with layers of green and yellow that mimicked the leaves and fruit, shimmering with every move. Their headdresses were massive, ornate creations, decorated with shells, beads, and more fruit. They were living, breathing tributes to the island's bounty. At first, I was just an observer, standing on the edge of the crowd with my camera as a shield. I felt that old, familiar feeling of being an outsider. The energy was infectious, but I was still on the outside, looking in. I watched group after group of dancers fill the streets, their performances telling stories of the island's history and legends. Their faces were painted, but their smiles were so genuine, radiating a pure joy that was impossible to fake. They weren't performing for tourists, they were celebrating for themselves, for their community. I walked through trade fairs where local artisans sold handicrafts and farmers displayed their produce. The air smelled of grilled food and the sweet, almost floral scent of the Lanzones. Vendors called out, offering samples. It was a complete sensory overload, but this time it wasn't overwhelming. It was exhilarating. I found a spot to watch the main parade, a blur of colorful floats and dancing groups from all over the island, each trying to outdo the next. There was a group of children, Kalanrakas Sakabatan they were called, dancing with so much passion, their costumes made from local materials. It was proof of how deep these traditions ran. But even in the middle of all this joy, a part of me still felt separate. I was enjoying the show, but I wasn't part of the story. I was starting to think that maybe this was all I would ever be here, an appreciative but distant observer. I bought a bottle of water and found a slightly quieter spot on some steps, watching families spread out picnic blankets, sharing food and laughing. And that's when it happened. That's when everything truly changed. I was sitting on the steps, fumbling with one of the lanzones I'd bought, trying to peel the thin, leathery skin. A woman sitting nearby with her family watched me struggle for a second, a gentle smile on her face. She leaned over, took a fruit from her own basket, and with a quick, practiced pinch, opened it effortlessly, revealing the translucent cloves inside. She handed it to me. "Here," she said, "like this." Her name was Lita. She was there with her husband, her 2 kids, and her elderly mother. That simple gesture, that small act of kindness, was the key. The invisible wall I'd felt around me for weeks just crumbled. They waved me over, making a space for me on their mat. "Come, sit with us. You are alone?" Lita asked. I nodded, and her smile widened. "Not anymore." For the next 2 hours, I wasn't a tourist. I was a guest. They shared their food with me, plates of rice, grilled fish, and a chicken adobo that was better than anything you could find in a restaurant. They taught me how to eat lanzones properly, showing me how to pick the sweet ones and warning me about the bitter seed inside. They laughed at my clumsy attempts to say, "Salamat, thank you." Lita's husband, Rico, told me stories about the island. He pointed to Mount Hibok, the volcano that loomed over us, and spoke of it not with fear, but with reverence. He said its soil is what makes their lanzones so sweet. Lita's mother, who spoke very little English, just kept patting my arm and offering me more food, her eyes crinkling at the corners with a warmth that needed no translation. Her kindness was a universal language. Their kids, shy at first, were soon showing me their toys and trying to teach me the festival dance moves. At one point, a street dancing group stopped nearby to perform. The music swelled, the drums pounded, and Lita's daughter grabbed my hand. "Dance!" she urged, pulling me to my feet. And so, right there on the side of a street in Mambajao, I danced. I was awkward and clumsy and had no idea what I was doing, but it didn't matter. I was laughing, a real, deep belly laugh, for the first time in forever. The family cheered me on, and for those few minutes, I wasn't a German traveler or an outsider. I was just one of them, lost in the rhythm and the joy of the moment. That afternoon, I learned more about the Philippines than I had in all the weeks before. I learned that hospitality isn't a word in a travel guide. It's a family sharing their food with a stranger. That community isn't just about living in the same place. It's about celebrating together and making sure no one feels alone. I learned that the true heart of this country isn't in its big cities or famous landmarks, but in the small, profound moments of human connection. As the sun began to set, I knew my trip hadn't been a mistake. The mistake had been in my perspective. I was looking for a postcard to look at. But the Philippines isn't a postcard. It's a celebration to be joined. The next evening, I went to a black sand beach, the island's volcanic heritage right under my feet. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. The festival's energy had quieted to a gentle hum in the distance. I walked along the shore, letting the warm water swirl around my ankles, and I thought about the girl who sat in that high-rise hotel in Manila, feeling so lost. She felt like a different person, someone I barely recognized. Camiguin hadn't just shown me a different side of the Philippines. It had shown me a different side of myself. The island, by being a little disconnected, had forced me to reconnect with the real world. The festival had pulled me out of my shell and thrown me into the heart of the celebration. And Lita's family, they had opened their hearts to me and, in doing so, had opened mine. I realized my initial mistake was thinking that travel is something you consume, that I was there to see things, take pictures, to get something. But that's not what real travel is. It's an exchange. It's about giving a piece of yourself, your vulnerability, your willingness to learn, and getting something far more valuable than a souvenir in return. You get a memory of connection. You get a change in perspective. I'd been so afraid of the chaos in Manila, but here I had danced in the middle of it and found nothing but joy. I'd been so intimidated by the culture, but a family had taken me in without a second thought. Everything I had been afraid of was just in my own head. The real Philippines had been waiting for me all along, with open arms. I just hadn't been open enough to see it. This island showed me a more meaningful way to travel. Tourism here felt different. It felt like it was on the community's own terms, celebrating their heritage, with the benefits flowing back to the people who call this island home. It wasn't about changing for tourists. It was about inviting tourists to appreciate the island as it is. And I appreciated it more than I can say. Sitting there on that black sand beach, I finally got it. I didn't make a mistake coming to the Philippines. My mistake was thinking I could ever understand a place without understanding its people. I came looking for beautiful landscapes, and I found them. But the true, unforgettable beauty of this country is its soul. It's in the warmth of a stranger's smile, the generosity of a shared meal, the joyous rhythm of a festival drum, and the overwhelming feeling of being welcomed. My journey started with regret, a feeling that I was in the wrong place. But it ended with a profound sense of gratitude and the feeling of having found a second home, even for a short while. Camiguin wasn't just a destination on a map, it was a turning point. It taught me that the best travel experiences aren't planned, they're felt. They happen when you let go of your fears and just open yourself up to the world. So, was the Philippines a mistake? Absolutely not. It was a lesson, it was a gift. It was an adventure that broke me down and then built me back up, leaving me with a story I'll be telling for the rest of my life. If you've ever felt lost while traveling, or if you found yourself somewhere completely unexpected, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. These are the stories that connect us all. Thanks for coming along on this journey with me, and don't forget to subscribe for more adventures. I promise there are many more to come.